Welcome to In the Company of Charity podcast.
Hey, everyone.
Sister Liz here and
Sister Elizabeth. Glad you're joining us again.
We're so glad you're listening. And we are in the thick of the Easter season. So happy Easter, everybody.
Happy Easter. Yeah, happy Easter to you, Sister Liz. How's it been going?
It's been going really, really well. At our place, we
good.
are doing our building and it'll be done in mid-June. So
yeah, we should post a couple of your YouTube videos about the construction. Daughters of Charity and hard hats.
They are pretty stellar, those pink hats. And I did not order them pink. That was Noble Construction, just saying. There was no option.
No.
I would prefer daughter Charity navy blue.
I was going to say, yeah, the pink and the navy blue kind of clash a little bit, but you wear it well.
We tried.
Around the construction zone, just where you need to be.
Yes.
It's awesome.
And I know you're not feeling 100%, but thank you for coming on anyway.
Well, thank you for mentioning that I might sound a little on the sick side. Well, that's just, what happens when you spend time with people in hospitals. And so I've been ordered to wear masks when you go in the hospital from now on so you don't catch anything. But, the other thing is I was bringing a mom and a child to the hospital. This child, normally kids don't have a lot of interest in me. I'm just not a kid magnet, But this particular day, she just didn't feel well. And of course, she wanted me to carry her. So, and of course, kid had strep. And 48 hours later,
guess who has strep?
Guess who has strep? Yeah. I said, how do moms not do this? They have some super immune system. Moms don't get as sick from their kids as other people do.
And teachers too have
incredible immune systems. Yeah, it's amazing. So anyways, but I am feeling much, much better.
To the topic of today's interview, we are actually having a guest interview today. Sister Salvatrice, who most of you would know at this point, she has done some other things for the podcast as well. She's interviewing Sister Teresa Daly about our first sisters.
Yeah, and I love that it's this week, the third week of Easter. Actually, it could have been any week of Easter, because I was thinking as I was listening to it that, these are the weeks we're talking about the development of the early church, the new members, the young members of the church, Acts of the Apostles. The followers of Jesus are out there and they're preaching the word and they're trying to recruit new members and they're baptizing all these new people and they're really trying to build up the following. And when I was listening to this, I thought, God, that's pretty much the way it worked in the beginning. There were these young women who were following Vincent and Louise, and then they just went out and, not recruited in the Army Navy kind of way, but in the way of training and trying to really minister for new disciples. And so that to me is just an amazing part of this, to have it this week. So early church, early Vincentian community, early Daughters of Charity all works together for me.
And I think sometimes people have this idea that, okay, the saints' lives, or you read the Bible and it's kind of like, oh, it was this way and it seems to come easily. And you read the heroes and you kind of can think that it was all cozy and with a little bow on it. And that is absolutely not the case at all.
No, it was not.
An absolute hot mess at the beginning, trying to figure out how things were going to go. And
these are human beings. They come with all their foibles and all their craziness, and they just come in their crazy lives and they plop it all down into the community, and everyone else has to deal with it. And so you're going to hear some pretty interesting stuff about these early sisters. It gave me a certain sense of solace, though. I thought, gosh, if these girls can make it, we're gonna be okay. Yeah, this is a lesson. If they can make it, anybody can do this. Anyone can do this.
Well, my favorite comment from Sister Teresa, and you'll hear it, is you all remember, if you know the community at all, that the Daughters of Charity were the first group that were able to be out in the world serving the poor, in the streets, and the rest before sisters were all cloistered. And so the comment is that any unmarried woman who was in the streets would be assumed that this is a what they call a sex worker now, but a prostitute for lack of a better word. And so, people were very, very suspicious of the sisters at the beginning.
Oh,
And
definitely.
so just to hear those stories, and Sister Teresa captures it very, very well. So we won't go too much further, but
Yeah. I think we just let everyone enjoy it. Sister Salvatrice is fantastic as an interviewer, and Sister Teresa Daly definitely has a wonderful spirit about the first sisters and just what they brought to the community, and the hopefulness of it all. So I think we let it go, and everybody have fun listening, and pick out your favorite sister.
yeah, exactly. All right, guys, enjoy the episode. We'll see you on the other side.
Hi, this is Sister Salvatrice Murphy, and I'm here in New Orleans, Louisiana, with Sister Teresa Daly, who's going to share with us a little bit about some of our Vincentian history in the early sisters. Welcome, Sister Teresa.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Can you just share a little bit about who you are and how long have you been a daughter?
I'm Sister Teresa Daly. I've been a daughter of charity now for 50 years.
Woohoo!
It's been a long time, but it's been wonderful. And I'm an educator. I've done a lot with formation, education, mostly with college age and older.
Great. Thank you, and thank you for participating in this podcast interview.
You're welcome.
As you know, I had asked for you to share a little bit about some of the work that you've done in learning about and sharing about the first sisters, the first daughters of charity. So can you tell us, how did you get interested in learning about the early sisters?
I had the wonderful opportunity of taking a year in the Vincentian integration experience in Chicago, where different daughters of charity came from different English-speaking provinces, which included Great Britain and Ireland and Australia, and lived together and studied. And as I was studying the Vincentian heritage and the Vincentian spirit, I loved the early sisters. I really believe they are an important part of our foundation. And so I really grew to love them and to know them, and so that's where I learned.
And how did you find out about the early sisters? Like, how did you learn more than, just kind of those common stories that get handed down, the little tidbits that we hear, that we come across in community? How did you find out more of the details?
Well, what I did, I knew most all of the early sisters who lived around the time of Vincent and Louise had a relationship with Louise. And I love the letters of Louise. I love letters even more so than biographies. Biographies are good, but that's what the author thought the person might have said. A letter is what the person actually did say. I went to all the letters of Louise that she wrote to one sister, like Barbe Anjibou, and I read every one, and I culled out the relationship they had from those letters. Then I went to the St. Vincent books, the cost books, and I read everything that was happening at the time Barbe Anjibou was in the community that would have affected her. So I basically did that. I focused on them, especially in their relationship with Louise.
Excellent. So tell us about some of them. Tell us about Barbe or some of the other early sisters.
Well, we have to remember, this was way back, like in 1630s, and the only way to be a consecrated woman in the church was to be cloistered. And Vincent and Louise had a different idea. They wanted us to be apostolic and with the poor. And so it was a risk for these women to come to Vincent and Louise. And Barbe was rather impulsive. She opened like 24 different houses in 16 years, and she started hospitals without asking Vincent and Louise, and she just went about and did her thing, and kept building places, and maybe she'd mention it to them. So, there's a lot of those little kinks that they had to get over. There was another one, Marie Jolie. Marie Jolie was in Sedan, which was in southern France, working with the soldiers from the war, and she loved it there. Absolutely loved it. She was there for 15 years, which was unusual back then. that you be there that long. And she was asked to leave and come back to Paris, to the mother house. She said no. And she said she'll only leave if Father Vincent writes her a letter telling her to leave, which he did. And she got the letter, and she left, and she went to Paris, and she went to dinner that night with the sisters at the mother house, and she disappeared, and she ran away. She ran away. And she was just going to leave the community because she couldn't stand not being in Sedan. She was going to go back and catch the train to go back to Sedan. Well, as she was walking back to the train station, she passed the parish she had worked in, the parish where Louise had had her light experience, several places that were significant to her. And she got to the train. She said, I can't do this. So she turned around and went back to the mother house and knocked on the door. And when Louise answered the door, Louise had her make a retreat. That was the cure for everything. So she had her make a retreat, and she said her vocation was deepened by that experience. You know, almost leaving, but going, having these memories kind of take her back.
And just kind of as a sidebar, what do you mean when you say Louise had her light experience? What is that about?
She has some doubts about her faith, about her marriage. This was before she was, with Vincent. And she had doubts, and she prayed and prayed and prayed about those, and she had like a dark night of the soul kind of thing. And it was on Pentecost in 1644, I believe it was, when she finally had the light of Pentecost, where God opened up for her some answers to her questions and took away a lot of her doubts. It was a spiritual experience.
And I guess she must have shared that a little bit with the sisters.
She wrote it down.
Okay.
And she carried it with her in her pocket the rest of her life. And she would take it out and she would read it. We have it in the original copy at the Mother House in the archives. But there's pictures of it all over the place. She wrote it in her own longhand. And she did share it. I mean, she shared it with Marie Jolie. She and Marie were close. That's why it broke Louise's heart when Marie ran away. So.
Can we go back to Barb for a minute? Because you kind of just glossed over this thing about starting hospitals without telling anybody. That seems like kind of a big deal.
It was a big deal. And even the undercurrent of it was that Barb had to understand we were founded to serve the poor. And the poor, the only people who had home health care were the wealthy. They could afford it. The hospitals were horrible. If you've seen the movie Monsieur Vincent, there were 2 and 3 and 4 people in a bed. People were dying in a bed, and other people were waiting for somebody to die so they could get there. It was horrible. So Vincent didn't really want to build hospitals. He wanted the poor to have the home health care that the rich had, and not have to go to hospitals. See, if Barb didn't yet have, because she was so new, that core belief about the poor. If she would have, she may not have started the hospitals, because that's where the poor already went.
So she didn't live with Louise at that time?
No.
How did she manage to do that without Louise finding out?
Well, she lived at a distance from Louise, and a lot of the first sisters were supported by the Ladies of Charity back then. Before they came into the community, they would go, a Lady of Charity would house them, would pay them something, would get them a job. But then, when they decided that they wanted to be a community, 4 of them joined Louise at her house, and then it kind of grew from that. But Barb was probably connected with one of the Ladies of Charity as well at one point.
Okay. And who were those first? So there were 4 original Daughters of Charity?
Yes. I don't really know the whole of their names, but there were 4 original. They were women who wanted to be consecrated in the church. All they knew was the cloister. They had a lot of the trappings of the cloister they kind of brought with them because that's all they knew. But Paris was really a big challenge for these women because they came to Louise. In Paris at the time, there were 800 dialects spoken. Louise taught them basic French, which was what she knew. She didn't know all of those dialects. So it was really a challenge for her to bring these first ones together. Many of them desired to call their sister servants Reverend Mother. That was from the cloister. Many of them desired to have grates in their houses where you would talk with someone behind a grate. So there was a lot of things like that were very difficult. It was a matter of a huge transition for them, just in their mindset about what it was to be a consecrated person in the church and how they could live that out and still walk the streets and serve the poor. The only women walking the streets back then were known as prostitutes. So that was another thing they had to overcome, that image, so yeah.
And how did they live then? That they didn't live in a cloister. How did they live in those days?
They lived with Louise in her house, and she did formation with them. She taught them. Louise was from the nobility. She knew the right way to eat. She knew the right knife to cook up and the right fork, and she knew how to do all that stuff. She taught them basic courtesy skills, and how to live. And she sent them out, to close in the neighborhood to work with the people. And Vincent would give talks to the ones who lived in Paris, but Louise is the one who formed them in their day in, day out living. In terms of how to speak to each other, how to deal with authority, how to live lives that were good lives, just day in, day out.
And so then they branched out from her home to other places. How did they get from one, how did they decide to go from one place to another, or, when they opened up a new convent, or what would that be called?
Well, a lot of it was the priest or the bishop would ask for them. They wanted sisters, in Sedan, or they wanted sisters in Angers, or they wanted sisters, in different places. So they would ask for them. Or the fathers of the poor, which is what they call the administrators of hospitals. They would ask for them. So a lot of it had to be, because Louise was always writing to Vincent saying, now so-and-so wants 3 sisters and I don't know what to do. Should I send them, or who should I send? If you think about mail back then, there was no email. There was no, everything was done by courier. Kind of like if somebody was in the coach and they may be passing through that town, they drop off the letters. It's amazing that we have 750 of Louise's letters, because they're big. Those sisters had something inside of them that said, we need to save them. And we have 750 of them.
Wow.
Which is totally amazing.
Yeah, that's awesome. So of all those letters and all those different sisters and the different relationships, do you have any favorites or any?
I kind of like Marie Jolie. I also like Jean Lepontre. Jean Lepontre was a bit eccentric. One of the big things they wondered about was what headdress to wear, garb to wear. And she wanted to wear this headdress like they wore in the cloister, where they had a veil before their eyes. Well, she did that, and she told Louise she needed to do that because she had an eye problem. And Louise told her 5 times, you can do that, but don't wear it to church, which she did anyhow, because she had this eye problem. I mean, it was like they did things that were very human. What really struck me so much about them is their great faith in starting into this new venture that even bishops and priests didn't understand. Some of the Daughters of Charity, the first ones, refused communion and the sacraments by the bishop and the priest because he thought they were prostitutes. He did not understand. So that was a big thing. And I think that they had great, great faith in doing what they did and risking, what they risked. But here we are today, thanks to them.
So what would you say that the First Sisters have to teach us today? Because now it's pretty common, for sisters to be out of the convent, and it's not very unusual. So what message do you think that studying the early sisters brings to us for today, for sisters of today?
Well, I think it brings to us living the life of a daughter of charity, and the 3 virtues of humility, simplicity, and charity. They haven't changed. And I think the way the early sisters lived them, they lived in a different culture, but the human heart doesn't change that much. And so I think that they, if we can live with the heart that they had in terms of their faith, their humility, simplicity, and charity, we're going to live it in a different culture. but it doesn't mean we don't live it. We do. And we can go back to them and reflect on their lives, you know, and how they lived, and then how do we live that way today? And who are some of your early sisters? Who were some of the ones that you first met?
Mm-hmm.
And how did they influence you? And take that as an example as well.
Mm-hmm.
They're more contemporary, but how would they influence you as well?
Awesome. Is there anything else that you'd like to share about the First Sisters? Or
Well, I just encourage all of us to, not just the First Sisters, but to learn from the wisdom of the past.
mm-hmm.
There's great wisdom, I think, in our grandparents, in our great-grandparents, and our parents, you know, that we can learn from in a more contemporary way, you know. But I was just so taken with the early sisters, and they are our founders,
Mm-hmm.
along with Vincent and Louise.
Mm-hmm.
Because if Vincent and Louise didn't have followers, we wouldn't be here today.
That is very true.
So, because of their faith and their, you know, their following, this is where we are today.
Well, great. Well, Sister Teresa Daly, thank you so much for being with us here and sharing with us. I'm Sister Salvatrice Murphy, and you've been in the Company of Charity in New Orleans, Louisiana with Sister Teresa Daly.
This has been in the Company of Charity podcast. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.